and today I'm going to speak about serverless on GCP. A quick introduction about myself: I'm Dharmesh Vaya. I work as a senior enterprise architect at VMware, and I'm like more of a cloud engineer or an architect from India. I have been having a diverse experience around 16 years into the IT. I happen to be a Google developer expert for GCP and payments, and I also actively manage the GDG community out here in Mumbai, India. You can refer to my blogs, CloudZone with a K, and you can know more about my speaking engagements, my talks, my blogs, and my thoughts around in general around cloud as well. Okay, so with that, let us get started. And in the next 15 to 20 minutes, we are going to see a quick run through around the serverless offerings on GCP, which include like Cloud Run, App Engine, Cloud Functions, and we also explore like what more we can do beyond these offerings as well. So with that, let us get started. We all understand that this is a famous quote that kind of comes across from our demigod like Yoda. So to deploy, deliver, you must. But how do you kind of actually do that? Where do you do that? And the first and foremost principle to understand serverless is the fact that let us kind of isolate the two components required, okay, from a deployment perspective, that what does it actually take to deploy. Okay, so the first piece is definitely your product or your service, your code basically. Okay, and the second part of it, which is going to be the infrastructure or the server. Now this is where the terminologies would come in. Okay, which is like serverless. Okay, ideally there is no such thing as serverless. It's more of a metaphor or a way of just kind of abstracting away the server from the end user or from the developer in this case. So there is nothing like codeless, so there cannot be something like serverless. When it comes to like development, right? You all are the experts. You know the best of how to develop a mobile app, how to develop a web app, whether you're writing it in Python, PHP, doesn't matter at all, right? You can know your frameworks very well. You know how to write your functionality very well. But then when it comes to the deployment aspect, okay, that is where developers tend to get stuck. That okay, hey, I have written my application, it works on my machine. But yes, how do I kind of deliver it in the best possible way so that my users do not face any kind of scalability challenges or something like that. Okay, so with that, like how do we go ahead? So let us understand this premise around serverless first of all. Again, I am re-emphasizing the fact that serverless does not mean that no servers. Okay, it is running somewhere, but it is heavily abstracted away from the user in the form of either parameters, services, or even as simple as having endpoints as such. Okay, so serverless essentially means a heavy layer of abstraction. And so yes, I mean, just again, a funny quote, like, okay, if you, as I was saying, right, if it's codeless, then it can be serverless. So if you don't have any code, you really don't need a server. Okay, so let us kind of get through this and understand. The first focus should be your application, not your infrastructure. As a developer, as a startup, or as a business, as an enterprise, okay, you should be focusing more around your product or your infrastructure, not really the infrastructure, because that is where you are going to leverage the full potential of serverless, and we'll see how. Okay, so if I have to say, right, what exactly does serverless mean? So these are all event driven systems. Okay, these can be on the cloud, and since we are talking around GCP, yes, we will focus on the cloud based serverless concepts. Okay, and they rely heavily, okay, on a combination of either third party systems, either your application logic or your client side logic. Okay, or they can be some hosted RPCs as well. Okay, now what do I mean by all this, right? So essentially, what I was trying to say earlier is the fact that serverless applications or serverless systems, okay, they rely on your application code, okay, to leverage the internal systems around the around cloud, whether these are endpoints, whether these are mechanisms of deployment, okay, whether these are mechanisms of storage, okay, or anything of the sort. So if I have to like kind of again sum it up, it's a heavy layer of abstraction apart from on top of your systems around storage, deployment, networking, and everything. Okay, so that's essentially the crux of serverless, and they heavily are uh, built on the basis of event driven. So when I say event driven, it means that it requires some trigger to be invoked. Okay, so when I say like, okay, hey, what is, I mean, if I go to a URL and say that, okay, go to cloudzone.co.in, okay, and it actually hits a endpoint on cloud run saying that, okay, hey, this is the web application you need to serve, okay, and it will throw back the response. So that's where it needs to be an event driven system as such. Okay, so when we talk of the compute options available, okay, now I'm heavily focusing on compute for now because I mean these are the three most prominently talked about serverless systems when it comes to GCP, okay, and the top three I would rank them as like Cloud Run, Cloud Functions, and App Engine. In fact, like App Engine was born first, in fact, you can say even earlier than the Google Cloud Platform itself. In fact, the cloud platform started with App Engine. Okay, then there were like a lot of iterations. Then came like Cloud Functions and Cloud Run. So if you talk in terms of hierarchy or in terms of chronological order, App Engine was the first to be born, and then eventually Cloud Functions and Cloud Run came. So Cloud Run is more of a containerized mechanism of running in a serverless manner. So we'll see that quickly in terms of a feature. Okay, but if you had to really decide, right, okay, so this essentially is the crux of the entire session as such, like what you are trying to build, and how do you choose, okay, which serverless offerings to pick from. Okay, so if you are doing a stateless HTTP application, or rather let's go to the right hand side one, it's the most simplest to start. Okay, if it's purely an event based system, right, okay, you just want a one to one kind of a mapping, okay, where it says so if it is like purely an event based, like a one to one mapping that you're trying to do, right, okay, here you're going to go straight forward with a cloud function. Okay, why? Because it takes just a set of parameters that you need, or it can be even without any parameters, more like an endpoint. Okay, and it gives you a appropriate response. Okay, so if it is more of an event driven system, okay, it is clearly going to be cloud functions that you should be using. When it comes to stateless HTTP application, so when I say stateless, okay, now the backend for this might not be available over here. You can still link backends. We'll come to that when we talk of Cloud Run or App Engine. Okay, but yes, primarily these are meant for like systems that are stateless, okay, which do not heavily rely on a backend, okay, or they do not really need for the application to store the state of the user or the entire system itself. Okay, so here there is this stateless kind of a system where you choose whether you need a configurable hardware. In this case, when I say configurable hardware, right, so the configurable hardware is nothing but whether you want to run on a custom configuration. In this case, a custom configuration can be achieved only if you are doing like Cloud Run for Anthos, because I mean that's a huge concept in itself. Like if you want to do Anthos and Cloud Run, you need an on-prem system as well, where you get that required configuration as well. If not, okay, and you want to rely on the the system that is given by GCP, okay, the default configurations given by GCP, okay, then you go for the this part of the diagram, which is like no. Okay, so let me kind of point to this. Okay, so here, okay, so you are going from here, uh, which is like the non-configurable one. You still nowadays, like in Cloud Run, you are given the option of changing the memory and the parameters out there, but yes, heavily within certain reams of, or within certain thresholds that you can do that. All right, now The question comes whether you need custom libraries. If yes, okay, uh, which means that you want your application to be heavily running into a system or into a language where you might have to really containerize that. In that case, the de facto answer would be cloud run. Okay, now when it comes to like cloud run, right, it is completely a containerized way of running your applications. Okay, it essentially runs on knative, if you want to read further. Okay, and knative is a mechanism where you kind of take a container, okay, and then abstract away the deployment piece of it, okay, and you get a compute or a node to kind of run this container, and you are given an endpoint back saying that, hey, this is your endpoint, you go ahead and run this. If now in this case, now if you don't want a custom language or a library, and you want to go for the default ones, like if you want to go for a Java, Python, PHP, something like that, okay, uh, there are like, okay, limitations to the supported languages, so you can like kind of check the documentation around app engine. Okay, now again, here we are going back to that same concept, whether it is a simple function, okay, or an application. Okay, had it been a function written in a custom language, okay, or the supported languages, the answer is simple, you go for cloud functions, okay, out here. Okay, however, if you want to choose, okay, of an application which is one of the supported languages of the serverless offerings, okay, app engine would be the best alternative. In fact, with app engine, there is not much of configurations also that is required. You just kind of go ahead and try to deploy this. Okay, in fact, you just need to, as simple as uploading files into a bucket or a drive. It is as simple as that. You just need one simple configuration file, and it kind of the rest kind of takes care of the deployment aspect. Okay, so this is more of a decision tree that is there when it comes to choosing the right serverless offerings. Okay, uh, well, I mean, when we go ahead in terms of understanding the products, you'll know like what feature works well. But yes, essentially, this decision tree helps a lot when it comes to choosing the right offerings. Okay, so with that, let us understand cloud run. Okay, so what basically does it provide? So you can write your application typically in any language with any library. Okay, yes, it has to be heavily containerized. So it purely depends on containerized workflows. So which means that you can also add any kind of additional checks that are required. So which means that you want to add a layer of DevSecOps, you want to add container scanning, you want to add third party vulnerability scans or anything of that sort, which can be possible in a containerized world. Cloud Run can help you with that, completely managed, which means that right from like, if for an example, if you have, whether it is 10 users or 10,000 users or 100,000 users, doesn't matter, it takes care of the scalability aspects. That's where I come from, an auto scaling thing over here. And as I mentioned earlier, it is built on knative. Okay, very cost efficient billing, because we'll see like why it is cost efficient. A quick 1 minute on this. Over here, if you see like these are like the instances which are running. Okay, and if a request comes to service A and a container instance is pinned up on runtime or like in real time, okay, you will get billed only for that instance of the container that is running. Whereas in service B, you see that there are no requests out here, okay, and there are no container instances running, which means that you will not get billed for that service B, which means a heavy cost saving also when it comes to using cloud run. So essentially here you are seeing that you I mean, if you understand that metaphor now, okay, if there is an event, there is a container running, and the application gets pinned up over here, whereas over here there is no event, no container running. It's essentially now getting that concept of serverless, which means that the container is running heavily abstracted from the user, and it lets you run only on a need basis. Okay, so this is what you can do in an end-to-end manner when it comes to CI/CD with GCP. Okay, typical workflow, like a developer taking his code to GitHub. There is something called cloud build. Okay, this gets the image that gets built, or a container image that gets built, is pushed to the container registry. Container registry says that, okay, hey, I have a new image ready to be deployed. Okay, Cloud Run says that, okay, yes, give me that image, because Cloud Build also sent me a trigger. Okay, I'll pull that image and it's ready to be deployed. Now, I explained this in a very simple, like 30 seconds or so, but yes, it requires a bit of configuration, but this is more of a one time configuration that you would have to do, and then it kind of takes care further. Likewise, let us see quickly the next few products. Okay, Cloud Functions. Okay, again, in fact, this is a more abstracted version around, even before like Cloud Run. Okay, because here it is purely a piece of code that is written in the console. Okay, and there are really no servers to provision, manage, upgrade, or anything. Okay, in fact, in Cloud Run you still might have nodes. Okay, here it is not really even a node running. Okay, it can be on a shared workload or a shared container that can be running, and it automatically scales based on the load. um, yes, this can be to simplify like complex application development. So for example, if application A wants to speak to application B, you just want to pass certain parameters, more of API driven stuff over here. So that's where like Cloud Functions will help you, and you get a completely end-to-end integrated monitoring, security, everything within the Cloud Functions as well. So whether it is hybrid, multi-cloud, even like if you want to do it with an on-prem stuff, that is also possible to use Cloud Functions. Okay, let us see like a quick um, use case where Cloud Functions are required. Okay, or just take the example of a mobile backend. A lot of you all might be doing it with Firebase as such. Okay, so when the local database wants to talk to the Firebase, okay, Cloud Functions can kind of wrap that up, modify or transform that data, and then take it ahead to Firebase. Likewise, if it is something of a real time processing that is required, okay, Cloud Functions would actually be a good fit into this workflow, because you might just have to do a simple task, whether you want to resize the image, whether you want to check whether the image is of the right file type, whether it is a JPEG, PNG, and you want to support only JPEGs. Okay, you want to check whether those conditions are matching or not, and Cloud Functions would be the best way to kind of handle these kind of logics. When it comes to App Engine, the final product that we are discussing, again, like a few set of languages that are supported, like Go, Ruby, JavaScript, Python, PHP, and Java as well. But yes, I mean, there are certain limitations in terms of the versions that are supported, so you might just have to be careful in choosing that. But yes, there is a standard environment and there is a flex environment. Okay, so again, very similar in terms of the feature sets, in terms of as compared to Cloud Run, any language, any library from the supported ones, fully managed. You also get app versioning. So in the Cloud Run, you have like container version. So there can be like, you can roll back to the previous version. In here, also just a very similar comparison in terms of features. Traffic splitting is also available. So for example, you want to do an A/B test or something like that. You can do that with App Engine as well as on Cloud Run as well. When it comes to security, right, inherently all the products that are there on GCP, they all follow the least privilege principles, and of course IAM being like kind of heavily implemented across. Okay, so any of the products, you should not be actually worrying about security. Yes, your application security is something that you should heavily focus on, or your DevSecOps processes, that is that something that one should focus on. Again, like a very simple use case where App Engine is kind of the front end for your game application or your game server, and it is essentially used to store the user information or the persona, okay, of the user. So here, like, what is the profile of the user, what are the demographics, how many points, how many players, or what category of players they have been playing with. And then from here, if you want to do a processing around the analytics around your application, okay, so App Engine is basically helping you kind of extract only that required amount of information. Now this is more of an application logic, but yes, if you had to kind of create an interface for sorry, if you had to create an interface from your applications, okay, this is one mechanism to kind of really do that. So yeah, I mean, if I had to like kind of sum that up, right, in a short span of time, so there is still a lot more to serverless, and we actually just touched upon like the tip of the iceberg, and especially the compute offerings. But if you are talking in terms of like more advanced or complex use cases around data ML products, okay, there is still like something like BigQuery, ML APIs, Vertex AI. All these also would fall under the serverless offerings of GCP. Okay, but yes, I mean, anything that is more of a managed services, right, they can fall under the serverless offerings. But yes, technically, they should be more like event driven. So any of the BigQuery ML APIs, these services, if they kind of work with endpoints, right, heavily, you can classify them under serverless. But yes, that is something of a topic for next time, and yeah, we can take that up as a next session. So once again, thank you so much for having me virtually at Devfest, Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. And yeah, these are some glimpses or pictures. If I mean, if that would have been in person, these are some nice pictures. So that's my handles. Like LinkedIn, I can be reached on Dharmesh Vaya. Twitter is at the rate DRVAYA. You can connect with me, feel free to interact, and I'm more than happy to kind of help you all around GCP cloud or anything in general around CICD, DevSecOps, serverless, or anything as such. Thanks again for having me, and all the best for the sessions of DevFest, and wish you all the best. Thank you. Bye bye.